Brendan, could you just give the checklist defensively? What goes in your mind knowing Orlando is the opponent?
I wouldn't even put it that way. I think just in general, defensively, being how many goals we've given up recently is a big issue for us as a team, especially as a back line. So I think instead of just looking at Orlando in general, I think we're just looking more at ourselves and trying to have solutions, amongst the group rather than being so focused on individuals from Orlando. Of course, we've looked at everything from them and we know their strengths. I'm sure that Chad has touched on that, but I think it's more just individual mistakes that continue to cost us. Lack of communication, lack of grit, and lack of urgency when we're defending inside of our own box. And those things have to change if we're going to win games, especially has to change if we're going to get results on the road. Everybody knows how tough it is to get points on the road in the MLS. So there's more of an internal kind of look that's going on right now, more than an external. But obviously Orlando is a very dynamic team and having their own struggles, but I'm sure that they'll look at a team like that, look at a team like us and want to capitalize. We've given up a lot of goals, and they'll kind of smell blood when it comes to us. But it gives us a good chance to kind of prove to ourselves about getting a good result on the road. I think we have to start by minimizing our own mistakes and minimizing the chances for the opponent. We always talk about you go on the road and keeping, a shutout has to be the first priority. And the goals for us will come after that. But too many times we've just given up goals early in games and it's kind of basically taking the wind out of our sails, and then that's been it. So that's been a big focus for us this week.
Well, then along those lines, can you share just how you go about, fixing internally, or is there a common theme? You mentioned communication and things like that. So, it's one thing when you break down the other opponent, but when you break down yourselves internally as a team, how do you go about correcting that? Or can you share with us what some of the conversations are like as you say, all right, look, we got to get back to X?
It's a lot of accountability, conversations that we have as a team. We've met multiple times over the last 2 weeks for long periods of time, where it just becomes a very open room about where we can improve as players and as a group and as a staff from their perspective, what they think they can improve on. And so, like I said, there's a real internal correction that's going on right now, and I think it's necessary for us to go forward because we're nearing the half of the season, the halfway mark of the season. And if we're gonna get anything out of this season and start to turn things around, we have to get going. I mean, I think there was, the comments at the early part of the season that it's early and we have the time to figure it out. And I mean, by the end of the next 2 weeks, we'll have played well over 20 games in the season already. So it's important that we have tough conversations amongst the group and amongst the staff, and guys have to be honest with each other and be honest with themselves about performances. I think guys have performed well this season, and I think that they can still look at themselves and say, I can give more and I can do better, because as a team, obviously we're at the bottom of the table, and it's not fun for anybody. I mean, it's tough on our regular lives. It's tough when it comes here to work. And so I think everyone's kind of tired of showing up and having that feeling. I know as supporters, as fans, it's disappointing for them as well. It affects our day-to-day lives when we don't get results, and we got to change that. We got to change that, and that has to come from us. It's not going to come from someone else. Someone else isn't going to just give it to us. So that's what we've talked about, and that's our goal. That's our journey now. Is figuring it out.
We'll go to Jason next.
Hi, Brendan. Thanks for speaking with us. I wanted to sort of building off of that. Those questions you're saying that everyone has to ask of themselves in a difficult moment like this. It can be, tough to look at the issues that, an individual may have had and still stay positive. I was wondering how the group is balancing that need to improve, that need to maybe be self-critical, but also still keeping a positive morale, that you're going to need as well.
I think that's where Chad's role comes in really well, because he's a super positive person, and he gets after us a lot, and he has really gotten after us the last few weeks. I mean, rightfully so, because his results are just not nearly good enough. It's tough. It's tough because, yeah, as an individual myself, I wouldn't categorize myself as a super positive person. I'm more neutral. And it is hard to remain positive when things are the way they are. But that's one of the things that you rely on a coach or leadership to push into the group, push into the players. They have the experience more than us, and they know that, it just takes one good result and one good, situation, a matter of span of 3 or 4 games to get things going again. And I think that's what we're all we keep talking about. It's like, we just need to get things going again. And there has been a lot of awakening, I would say, in the last few weeks. I think guys have really gotten after each other in a productive way, I would say. I mean, there is arguments and there is, situations where players, need to work things out, because we have to get on the right page, because we can't keep having the same problems we're having. And at the end, you have to have that energy and that positive mindset each time you go into the game. And I think that's been our biggest struggle this year. Is I think the trainings have been really, really good. I think the energy has been there, and people have been fully aware and focused on what the task is, but for some reason it doesn't turn over to the game. And I think that's been one of our biggest conversation topics, has been why we're not transitioning that into the game. Why is it such a good week of training and then the game is not what we had in that week of training? So that is what we are pushing fully, towards for the Orlando game. That's been the total focus this week. Not that it has in other weeks, but there's just been a very, very strong focus on, we have to transition all this good energy, good work ethic that we've put into the training sessions, the long meetings, the long video sessions that we've had over the last 5-6 days, now into the game. So to answer your question, it's not easy to keep positivity and also be very self-critical of yourself, but it's part of our job. And the moment that the positivity goes out the room and it becomes negative, we're not going to get any productivity out of anybody. So it's a fine balance, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job of it. And I can say for sure that the coaching staff has done a good job of making sure the positivity is still there, even if we, are jumping on jumping on each other a little bit more than usual.
Thanks, Brendan. I appreciate it.
Next, we'll go to Jeff.
Brendan, you said you guys are doing a lot of self-analysis and being honest with yourselves. Let me ask you this. Do you guys feel like you're a playoff team? And if so, why?
Well, it's a good question. I think that looking at the group that we have on paper, I do think that we're a playoff team. But the way we've performed in games, no. Simply because you can't perform the way we have, especially on the road, especially at home, and expect to be in the playoffs at the end of the year. So is there a clear window for us to change and make ourselves a playoff team? Absolutely. And I think that window is closing more and more the further we get into the season and don't figure out a way to get results. And it starts on Monday. It's a perfect chance to go on the road and prove we're not just going to be prove that we're not just going to be a pushover team, and I think I'm looking forward to the challenge, because I can surely guess that many people have written us off already, and definitely for the game against Orlando, they've said no chance DC, and let's just give Orlando 3 points and go. And that gives us zero pressure to go into that game, and it gives us all the confidence as a group to say, let's just go and prove it to ourselves, not to anybody else, and especially to our fan base. I think the fan base has had a hard season as well. I mean, watching the way that things have been, and it hurts us as players because we represent DC, and this isn't what we want to show as a team. So that's the nice thing about this game is you always have a chance to redeem yourself before it's too late, hopefully. And hopefully, yeah, we can do that on Monday.
Perfect. We'll go back to Dave.
Just real quick, it can't be an easy situation with a new goalkeeper having to come in now and also joining you mid-season. How is the integration of that now when you've got a new goalkeeper behind you and trying to get him up to speed in such a critical portion of the season, or is that not a factor?
I think thankfully Rafa is a very experienced goalkeeper, and he knows exactly what type of situation we're in. He's a very clever person, and he has all the tools to help us. John as well, both experienced guys. So I think one position isn't going to make the difference. Again, it's more of a group thing, and I can only really speak about myself as a defender because that's my job, and that's what I do. So for us as defenders, it's the same as goalkeepers. The amount of goals that have gone in this season is unacceptable, whether it's our fault or somebody else's fault or whatever. So the goalkeeper situation is always going to be strong. I think that those guys, whoever it is, we have full faith in them, and they always produce for us. So we just as a team need to produce now for you guys, for the fans, for supporters, and for ourselves. So that's the most important.
Perfect. Thank you, Brendan. We'll throw it to Sam for in-person question.
Give me a question.
Sure. Yeah, so Brendan, as a veteran, as a character guy on the team, and you talk a lot about the accountability and the discussions going on. Just how are your roles in kind of helping facilitate that and keeping things going and moving in the right direction?
It's a tough question because, yeah, I understand my role in this team, and I understand that I have expectations as a player and as a leader. But the first thing I thought about, after the last few games is I have to, refocus again on myself, on my game. I think that was an important thing. I had to realize that if I'm not, performing the way I want to perform, it's hard for me to be critical of other players and other people. So, along with what I said earlier, I think it's also important that we remain positive. It's very hard to do. I know when things are not well and you come into the locker room and you just feel the energy is not quite where it should be. And, it affects me on my day-to-day life, because I want to come to work and enjoy what I'm doing and be in a good atmosphere. And I think everybody does. And so when things don't go well at the weekend continually, and then you have to do the whole thing again during the week, it is a tough situation to be in. But you have two choices, right? You can show up and be a negative, critical person, or you can be positive and say, come on, there's ways to fix this. And so the first thing I've tried to do is just figure out how I can be more productive as a player in my own game. And I think from there, then I can start to focus more on, helping guys that maybe are struggling more than others in these moments, younger guys who are not used to these situations. I've had this situation one other time in my career where it's just been really tough to find rhythm of getting wins. And the one thing I know from it is that you can't lose the spirit, because it does just take one or two games to get things going. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're out of it. And now we have some momentum. And the nice thing about MLS is that you get some momentum now toward the end of the year. You can still do something with the season. It's not like the season's over just because of, there's no playoffs or anything. It's the great thing about this league. So the older players have just tried to be really, patient and, I'd say guiding for the younger guys. But then on the other side, urgent about, again, the window's closing for chances to get it going here. We are at the halfway mark basically. So those I'd say would be the main messages that I try to give. And I'm sure most of the other guys would say the same who are in my situation.
It seems like you guys have a lot of different kind of emotions and feelings going on. I guess like you talk about the urgency, the frustrations, but also kind of having to balance having that optimism. How do you, as a player, and how do you guys as a team kind of try to manage all those different emotions, and how big would a win on Monday kind of factor into all of that helping?
I think it's hard for anybody. I don't think it just has to do with us being in our job. I think anyone who's in a tough situation with family or work or whatever, it's hard to manage your emotions. I don't know. I think for us, we rely on experience. I mean, there's a lot of guys who, again, have been in these situations before, or, have had tough situations in their life, and, have to realize they have to remain, positive for one reason or the other. I think, I rely a lot on stuff outside of soccer to help me bring good attitude into, my work life, my wife, my daughter, those kind of things help me kind of reset, realize what's, most important, and say, okay, control what you can control. And I just have realized that being a negative and critical person when times are really bad just makes things a million times worse. And so, that's one thing that's been really nice about this group is as tough as it's been. And we've had some really tough conversations, like in this room alone, there's always been a positive outlook and a, positive ending. And now it just has to transition over to the game. So much conversation and good, meaningful things that we've had on the training field and in these rooms and in meetings. And that's the biggest thing, is now to transition into the game. So of course, I mean, Monday for us is, every game for us basically is a final now, not to be cliche, but it is. I mean, we have to treat them like that because we're running out of time. We're running out of time to get things going. And I think once we get things going, we can really be on a roll. But it's just, we got to get the engine started and get moving. That's the most important thing. So I'm hopeful, and I think that the group is as well. And I think we know it's an extremely important game. This is business, and business in this sport means winning. And so we got to get back to that. No more losses, and no more just giving teams easy games. We're all tired of that. So yeah, there's a big emphasis for Monday for sure.